I don't accept someone who got knocked up and dropped out of high school. I bet your baby's by some random guy. Get out. That's what Anne, my mother-in-law, says. Then she grabs the tissue box nearby and throws it at me. Luckily, my husband intervenes, so I'm not hit and avoid getting hurt, but being insulted day after day has left me emotionally scarred. Getting married in my teens was probably a bad idea, but it's too early to give up hope. Being young means you can start over in life. Hey, Anne, remember that what goes around comes around. My name's Kara. I'm 40, and even in the chilly winter, my face stays warm. Is this early menopause or what? Though my hands and feet are freezing, tonight's supposed to be cold again, so I'll put on some leg warmers. Anyway, let me tell you about this ice-cold drama I've been through in my life. I got pregnant at 16 and gave birth at 17. Now, having a baby at that age might sound wild, but giving birth wasn't the tough part. It was what happened before. I was in high school when I got pregnant, but I dropped out because of it. My husband, George, is 2 years older, and we were in the same club. We've been together since middle school. So, yeah, people often look at us with those judgmental eyes like having a kid so young, shameful. I guess that's somewhat understandable. But let me tell you, we were dead serious about each other. That's something I want to proclaim loud and clear. When George found out about the pregnancy, he was like, "All right, let's get married." It was like he'd made up his mind right then and there. He said, "Sooner or later, we would have gotten married anyway." It wasn't about taking responsibility. He genuinely wanted to marry me, so I was over the moon. My parents were, of course, furious about the pregnancy, and George was scolded by my dad more times than I can count. Despite all that, they acknowledged our commitment and approved of our marriage and the baby. George's mom, Anne, was also shocked at the young pregnancy and marriage, but accepted it easily. She even suggested, "Your parents both work, right? You can't afford to rent a place yourselves, and raising a child for the first time is tough. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so why don't you move in with me?" Her thoughtfulness and warmth made me feel like she could be a real mom to me. Until then, at least. Now that I'm older, here's what I say to my younger self. Be more skeptical of others' intentions. George's family is a single-parent household. His dad passed away when he was young. Anne had him in her 40s and adored him a lot, probably because she raised him all by herself. I only realized how unnaturally she doted on him when we started living together. I wish I'd known sooner. When he went out to look for work, leaving me alone with her, she said to me, "I only accepted your marriage for appearance's sake. I don't see you as a daughter-in-law." George told me that they faced a lot of challenges because they were a single-parent family. She feared the small-town gossip if her son got a high school girl pregnant and then left her without taking responsibility. I was completely shocked. I had believed I was accepted as part of the family, but the reality hit me like a ton of bricks. From that moment on, she gradually turned into a bullying mother-in-law. Me being pregnant made no difference to her. One afternoon, she asked me, "Kyra, we're out of milk. Can you run to the store and get some?" So I headed to the nearby convenience store. She told me I didn't need to lock the door since it was just a 5 to 10 minute walk. But when I got back home, the door was locked. I buzzed the doorbell but got ignored. If there had been any foot traffic, she, always mindful of appearances, would have let me in right away. But the neighbors around the house were normally at work, so it was pretty dead during the day. I ended up standing there for about an hour until the courier showed up and finally got myself inside. And just to reiterate, I was pregnant. Anne greeted me like nothing happened. "Oh, you're back," with a smug smile. Other than that, she wasted no time pointing out everything I did wrong. How I folded clothes, my cooking skills, my cleaning, it was endless. Even when I fixed things the way she wanted, she'd scold me for something else next time around. And every time she'd say, "No surprise a high school dropout like you doesn't have any common sense. Wonder what kind of upbringing your parents gave you? If they had raised you right, you wouldn't have been knocked up in high school. Whose baby is it really? I can't believe George would do something as reckless as this." "Whose baby? It's your precious son's, lady." She didn't stop at just verbal abuse. She'd mess with my stuff too. Putting push pins in my shoes, pulling my hair, stuff like that happened all the time. I was insulted and tormented every single day. With a growing belly and all that stress, I was maxed out with stress. George started asking if cohabiting was tough. He had no clue about the bullying I was enduring. Anne played nice with me in front of him. So, he was just concerned that living in an unfamiliar environment was getting to me. I didn't want to worry him, so I'd just say, "Maybe homesick. I'll get used to it soon." I was hiding the fact that I was being mistreated. One day, shortly after George started his new job, he fell sick and came home early. At that time, Anne was tearing up my clothes in the dresser, fully invested in her bullying campaign. She mistook him, who'd just opened the side door, for me coming back from shopping. She greeted him with a wicked smile, holding the torn clothes, saying, "Made some nice rags, you see." When he finally caught on to her bullying, he lost it. He stood up for me in a family meeting, but Anne didn't even apologize. "You wouldn't understand. Being a man, but daughters-in-law normally need discipline." To top it all off, she cursed me out. "I don't accept someone who got knocked up and dropped out of high school. I bet your baby is by some random guy. Get out." She couldn't stand that her prized son married a dropout. She'd been convinced my baby wasn't his, and I doubted I'd ever win her over. To her, I was some loose woman who stole her beloved son. She insulted me every single day, and I was at my breaking point. With tears streaming down my face, I replied, "Okay, I'll leave." Hearing that, she rejoiced with a twisted smile. "Then you're getting divorced, right?" George pleaded. "I'll find us a place to move to ASAP, so let's leave together. Please, don't talk about divorce." He tried desperately to stop me, but I couldn't see it any other way. Looking back, I think I was on the brink of a nervous breakdown or something. He resisted till the end, but I broke down in tears, begging for separation, and we finally got divorced. Getting hitched as a teen was just a recipe for disaster. And just like that, 10 years flew by. One day, an unexpected visitor showed up at my place, my former mother-in-law. I had never told her my address. She said she spotted me while out shopping and followed me in a taxi. Ugh, so creepy. She looked like she hadn't been taking care of herself, leaning on a cane and seeming a bit out of it. Her hair had that matted look you get when you don't wash, and my first impression was that her clothes were all raggedy. She came up to me with tears in her eyes, saying, "Finally found you, Kara. Please, help me." I thought that reaching out to me at that point could only mean one thing. So I played dumb and asked, "What do you want?" "Please, I need you to take care of me." "You're asking for help from the former daughter-in-law you kicked me to the curb? You seem pretty healthy. Do you really need caregiving?" "Can't you see? My legs have problems, and I can't do anything on my own. I've been relying on caregiving services, but I'm broke. Please, I'm begging you. I took care of you for a while before the divorce, remember?" If I remember correctly, I wasn't exactly living it up rent-free, kicking back. I was doing all the housework while pregnant, getting bullied, basically working as your punching bag. So it doesn't feel like I owe you much. "You're heartless to an old lady." I don't want to hear it from someone who was cool to a pregnant daughter-in-law. Besides, why don't you rely on your precious son? I retorted with a smirk. She didn't catch my sarcasm and lamented about his absence.
He's nowhere to be found. He's been gone for 5 years now. Not a word from him. I raised him all by myself, and now look how he treats me.
Oh? Did you call for me? A man's voice chimed in from behind me in response to Anne's complaint. The moment she saw his face, she gasped in disbelief.
George?
Hey, it's been a while, Mom. He smiled like nothing had happened, as if it was just another day.
Why are you here?
It was a valid question.
I couldn't just leave my pregnant ex-wife hanging after we split.
What?
She looked utterly bewildered by his answer. He's been coming here even after the divorce. I explained, to which her eyes widened and she screamed,
You betrayed me!
When we divorced, she threatened us with,
Don't you dare ever contact each other again. We'll acknowledge the kid, but won't pay child support. Raise it on your own, somewhere far from us.
Not paying child support wasn't something you could just get away with, in my opinion. My parents were like,
It's better to steer clear of Anne.
We'll support you financially for the kid. So I didn't push George for it. But he wasn't okay with a divorce in the first place and showed up at my house almost every day after the split, saying he wanted to get back together. He hadn't done anything wrong, but my parents kept blaming him, saying,
It's because of you that our daughter went through hell.
Even then, he kept coming over, undeterred. I heard later that he admitted to my parents he was at fault and apologized for what he'd done to me. He brought child support every month, but my parents told him we didn't want anything to do with him and refused to take it. Realizing he couldn't get anywhere with the child support, he started bringing diapers and stuff for our daughter, showing his sincerity in every way possible, even if it seemed a bit too persistent. Eventually, my parents were moved by his efforts and started asking me,
Don't you want to give him another chance?
I didn't give in so easily, though. I still have feelings for him, but I wasn't sure about jumping back into a relationship with someone I'd already divorced. The idea of remarrying didn't sit well with me. He never gave up and kept proposing to me, even though we weren't even together. Eventually, I gave in. Our daughter had grown attached to him, and my parents were so chill about him visiting that they started asking when we'd marry. Even though I had some reservations, I realized there wasn't anyone else I loved so deeply and no one who loved me more than him. I don't want to get involved with your mom again, so let's not remarry, but just be together. I was weirdly stubborn about it, but he agreed and started living together. Basically, during the time Anne thought he'd gone missing, he was actually with me the whole time. When she found out the truth, she started banging her cane on the floor and yelled,
You scumbags! Rot in hell!
Call us whatever. It's what had to be done for our happiness.
He petted our daughter's head beside him. Anne went pale when she saw her face, a clone of George.
She's really your kid.
I've been telling you that from the start. I couldn't help but interject.
It's all my fault. I was wrong. So please, come back home.
She pleaded desperately. Just because you want us to come back, you're apologizing for the show. I doubt that you're really reflecting on what you did.
No, that's not true. I reflect now.
She stammered. And just now? Isn't it a little late for that? If you'd shown some remorse earlier, we might have been more receptive. But your sincerity isn't coming through at all. When I let out my real thoughts, George chuckled, seeming amused, while Anne trembled, her face burning red.
Stop laughing. You're my son, right, George? You have an obligation to take care of me. Come back home.
Well, yeah, technically, but I'm not really itching to go back home.
You ungrateful child.
Facing her on the verge of losing it, while he remained cool as a cucumber, I chimed in with a smile. How about I take care of you?
Really?
Both of them exclaimed in surprise. Her eyes even seemed to sparkle with joy.
Are you sure about that?
Why not? As a thank you for everything, I'll take care of you as best as I can. Though I gotta admit, I don't have much experience with caregiving, especially when it comes to bath safety and stuff. So, I might mess up a bit. As I chuckled, her face turned visibly pale. Meanwhile, George was cracking up. Well, I guess it is what it is. I'm terrible at cooking, so I might end up making super salty meals that skyrocket your blood pressure.
Enough! I'm leaving! I was an idiot to rely on you guys.
She must have felt a little terrified. Slightly trembling, she called over a caregiver who came with her, urging her to assist her in getting out of the house. Oh, come on. I wouldn't do anything that bad, you know. Only someone like you can do stuff like that. I slipped, my mouth running faster than my brain. And that's how we regained peaceful days once again. After that, Anne ended up relying on her younger sister, with whom she'd always had a rocky relationship. Apparently, she had also suffered a lot of mistreatment from Anne. In the name of caregiving, she put her through quite a lot of ordeal or something like that. Yikes. She seemed rejuvenated when we met at Anne's funeral, looking younger than she had in years. Maybe relieving her stress really did wonders for her. We better not earn people's grudges, you know. When Anne was hospitalized, George went to visit her out of duty as a son. However, she spent the whole time bad-mouthing us, which infuriated him so much that he never visited her again. And there were times when she reached out to see him, but to no avail. Even when she passed away, he reluctantly attended the funeral as a chief mourner, but if I hadn't insisted he go, he would have skipped it. I always thought I was the victim of her bullying, but maybe he, who was divorced because of her, was the real victim all along. A few years after Anne's visit, we finally tied the knot on our daughter's birthday. It felt like we'd already cut ties with her, so why hadn't we remarried sooner? Well, it was just a matter of pride, I guess. I loved George too much to risk another divorce. I did have some doubts, wondering if he just wanted to remarry because of our daughter. I wanted to test if he really loved me. Plus, changing my daughter's last name was another reason why we held off. But honestly, once she started calling him Daddy before we got married, it was pretty clear that remarriage was in the cards. If soulmates are a thing, then George is definitely mine. Even if I were reborn, I'd still want to be a family with him and our daughter.